Ophelia was standing outside of Loman's room when Benson arrived. She smiled when he approached. Except for a few random streaks of gray hair and the worry lines around his eyes, he hadn't changed much since their last meeting. He was ruggedly handsome, with a deep cleft in his chin and smoky green-gray empathetic eyes. She gave him a hug. "You look good, Benny," she said. "Oh, I'm sorry, There was so much Benson wanted to say, but he didn't know where to start. "I know. It's all right," she said. "We can talk later." Benson was grateful for the reprieve and pulled himself together. "Have you talked to Officer Loman?" "Just to see how he was doing. I told him you and I were assigned to the investigation and you'd be here soon." He nodded. "So what can you tell me about him?" She looked directly in his eyes and laughed. "He reminds me of you." Benson shook his head. "Oh, Christ," he said with a forlorn expression. "I hope he's nothing like me." Loman turned towards the door when they entered his room and smiled at Ophelia. "Jake, say hello to Detective Benson," she said as she nodded her head in Benson's direction. "Detective?" "Officer." Benson paused as he studied the young man lying in the bed. "You feel up to answering a few questions?" "Sure," Loman replied, and Benson moved closer. Benson pulled a notebook from his jacket pocket and sat down in the chair at the foot of Loman's bed. Before he began his questions, he entered the date, time, and location of the interview and shifted his gaze to the man. He noticed that even with his hair cut regulation short on the sides, there were sandy brown curls on the top of Loman's head. The lighter hair and light blue eyes contrasted with his dark, Semitic complexion. There was a brace-like contraption that was strapped to Loman's shoulder to keep his left arm immobile, and a bandage on his forehead above his right eye. He looked pale and tired. What would you expect after having gone through the trauma of an assassination attempt and surgery less than 12 hours before? But he was alert and looked directly back at him. Jesus, Benson thought. He looks like a kid. "Can you tell me what you remember about the incident?" Loman gave him a detailed narrative starting from when the shooter ran out of the bodega and ending when he lost consciousness. After Loman finished, Benson looked down at his notebook. "According to the radio log, you called out of service at 11:47 p.m. How much time passed before you saw the shooter run out of the store?" Loman broke eye contact as he considered the question. "It couldn't have been more than a couple minutes, maybe less. I talked with the guy who ran the corner." "The man you described as a tall, thin, light-skinned black man with gold-capped front teeth?" Loman nodded. "Yeah. Whenever I drove by the corner or stopped, he was always there. You know, like he was guarding his turf." "Do you know his name?" Benson asked. Loman shook his head. "No, I thought of him as Goldtooth." Benson looked down at his notes again. "The radio log has you calling for assistance at 11:53 p.m. So, if you called out of service at 11:47 and between 1 and 2 minutes passed before you first saw the gunman, the entire incident took no more than 2 minutes. Sound right?" "I guess," Loman replied and exhaled. "Detective, it seemed a hell of a lot longer. I mean, it was like a firefight when I was in Kandahar province with T-men crawling up my ass. You know, 1 minute it's normal, then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, and then..." He held Benson's eyes for a beat. "Time means nothing when someone's trying to kill you." He stopped again, lost in his memories. "The thing is, in Kandahar you always knew shit like that could happen, so you were always kinda on guard. And I know being on the job is dangerous, but this... I mean, it was... I don't know." He looked away with unfocused eyes. Ophelia handed him the glass of water from the table by his bedside. He smiled and took a sip. "Did you get a look at his face?" Benson asked. Loman nodded. "Yeah. He was so close. Inches. I could feel his breath on my face. I can still smell the stinking garlic." "Did you recognize him?" "No." "You sure?" "I never saw him before." Benson showed him the suspect's picture. Lohman studied it and nodded. Yeah, that's him. And you're positive you never saw him before? Lohman closed his eyes as if trying to pull the suspect's face from his memory. Sorry, I just don't remember ever seeing him. According to the arresting officers, when they took him into custody, he asked if the Jew he shot was dead. Benson told him. He said that? Benson nodded. Lohman turned from Benson to Ophelia, a look of incredulousness on his face. What the fuck? So he knew me? He tried to kill me because I'm Jewish? Apparently, Benson replied. I don't understand. How can this be? I swear I never saw this guy before. Ophelia touched his hand, trying to calm him down. His name is Melvin Harris, also goes by Mustafa Ali, Benson said. Do those names mean anything to you? Again, Lohman shook his head. Benson looked over to Ophelia and then back to the young police officer. Okay, let's give it some time. Maybe something will come to you.